In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make these cute little cupcakes. They're quick and simple to whip up. They don't need many ingredients, and you should be able to make one in less time than it takes to bake a batch. So let's get started. You're going to need some size 3 bugles. These are used to make sort of the paper cases that are around the width of the cake. You can use any colour you like. I'm using cream because it fits with the overall theme. Then I've got some delicas. You're going to need less than 50 delicas to make the icing or the top of the cake. So you can do them in a colour to represent the icing. You can do them in more of a biscuity, beigey, creamy colour to be a vanilla sponge. You can do them in brown and make a chocolate sponge. You're going to need one 9x7mm drop to go in each cake. This is to stabilise it. And then I've just got some size 6 red beads to be a cherry on the top of the cake. If you want to make an unbirthday cake, you can always use another bugle for a candle, and then a couple of beads to represent the flame. But we'll talk about that more when we get to the end of the design. So I've got a size 10 needle, and I've got approximately 1 metre of Nymo D threaded on. I've got a keeper bead tied about 15 to 20 centimetres from the end of the thread. You don't need masses of thread at the end, but you need to make sure you've left enough to make it nice and easy for yourself to tie the thread in. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by picking up a bugle, a delica, and a second bugle. We're going to slide those down to the keeper bead, and then we're going to come through all of the beads in the same direction as before a second time. And what this will do, let's move those two slightly, is give you, it's essentially a triangle because it's 3 sides of a shape. So you want the 2 bugles to sit together at the bottom, and then this delica at the top will just sit slightly to give them a little gap. So it doesn't need to be massive, and don't worry if it's not there. As you add more and we go further on, it will force the shape to form. So at the minute we've added 3 beads and gone through them all a second time. What we're going to do now is we're going to pick up a bugle and a delica, and we're going to go back down through the bugle that we're coming out of, and again we're going to go up through the next bugle along. There we go. And then I'm going to pick up a delica and a bugle, and again through the bugle, through the delica, and back down through the bugle. And then again bugle and a delica, and we're going to keep repeating this sequence until we've got 10 bugles in a row. If you've got any bugles that are obviously much longer or much shorter than the others, then now's the time to cull them, because you do need this to be relatively even all the way along. They don't have to be perfectly exactly matching, but somewhere close is sort of what you're aiming for here. So that's 7. That's 8. And if you can see, I'm just holding the rest of the work in my fingers, which doesn't make for a very good video, I'll admit. But if you just hold those in place, then it helps you get a firmer tension on your beadwork, which is what we're looking for. So because we want this to stretch around the facet that we're going to insert, you are better off using thread rather than something like fireline here, because you do need something that's got a little bit of give to it. So you can use Nymo, Superlon, Mayuki thread, any other thread that you've got a particular fondness for. I don't recommend Fireline because Fireline doesn't have the give that the rest of the threads do. But if Fireline is your absolute favourite thread, then go ahead and use it. You just need to be a bit more aware of your tension. So there we go. So that's 10 bugles in a row if I've counted correctly. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What we're going to do now is we're going to join these beads into a circle. So to do that, I'm just going to fold the beadwork in half, and I'm going to go up through the first bugle that we added. Just make sure you don't catch your keeper bead, because we are going to take that off when we get to the end of the project. And if you've not stitched it in, then that makes everybody's life much easier. And then we're going to pick up a delica, come down through the bugle, and we'll just repeat that thread path a second time. So up, through, down, there, and then up and out through the delica. And there you can see, if I open it up, you've got a little tube of bugles held together by a row of delicas at the top of the work. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 1 delica into every space around the top here. So that's another 10 delicas that we're adding. So this is essentially now the start of peyote stitch. So we're just going to add a bead into every gap. Oops, there's the one bead. And the last bead. And now we're going to add this last bead. I'm going to go in through the last bead of the previous round and step up to come out of the first bead that we've added on this round here. So we'll go through there. So if you need to, then you can refer back to the tubular peyote stitch series of videos that we did a little while ago, and they will take you through the basic stitch, decreasing, increasing, and everything like that as well. So one to look out for if you need it. What we're going to do now is we're going to insert the drop into the beadwork so that the narrow end sits at the bottom and the wider end sits at the top where the delicas are. And what we'll get, and that will just help form just a slight, you should be able to see just a slight angle on the cupcakes, just to make it look a little bit more realistic, possibly. It depends on the shape of your bunting, doesn't it, really? But there we go. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to start decreasing. And to do this, we're going to pick up a bead. We're going to go through the next bead in the previous round. And then we're going to skip a bead and go through the one after that. So we've got a little, there's the 2 beads, and there's a tiny little bit of thread showing there. But once you've pulled that up and once we've added the next round of beads, you won't see that thread. So that's 1. So in this round, we're going to add 5 beads and skip over 5 gaps. So through and skip. Now, if it's easier for you to do them together like I'm doing here, then do. If it's easy to do them 1 bead at a time, then do it that way as well. It's whatever works best for you. So there we go. And One more. Now, when you get to the end of this row, you just need to be careful because the step up is a little bit disguised. So that's the bead I'm going through to add. And then I've got the gap. I'm going through the gap and then up into the first bead we've just added of those 5 there. Okay, and you can see there that that's brought the top of the beadwork in quite nicely, and it's holding the drop bead in place. It's only the tension of the beads that holds that drop bead in place in the work. There's nothing else that runs through it to hold it in place. So you do need to make sure it's reasonably firm at the top. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to do a plain row of beading. So we're just going to add 1 bead into each gap as we go round. So again, we're just going to add 5 beads. 1, 2, oops. There's 3, 4, and again, find your step up and then step up into the new bead that you've just added. That's just got caught there. Just pull the tail of my thread through as well. That's got a bit too close. So there we go. And pull that in again. And then we're just going to add 1 more round of, we're just going to add 1 more round of 5. And this is where it will get a little bit tight, but there is just enough room. There's 3. There's 4. And 5. And you can see there that's pretty well closed up on the top of the cake. Just give it a squeeze and they're all sitting. And then we're just going to run the needle through those last 5 beads a second time to make sure it's nice and firm. That's 5. And again, if you just put your thumb on the top of your work, you can guide the beads into place. You can tell them where you want them to sit. So what you can do now is, if you just want to make a little standalone cupcake, if you've got something like a miniature plate of cakes, a display or something you want to do, you can just pick up 1 more bead and stitch it across that hole on the top if it's going to be standalone. Because we want to use it to thread through, I'm actually going to just leave that gap at the top because that's where the hole in the bead is. So you can see the needle will run straight through there. So I am going to leave that little gap, but if you don't want it, then just stitch a single delica across the top and that'll close up the hole in the end of the cake. So next thing to do is to just finish off this thread end. So I'm just going to weave through a few beads there, and then I'm going to tie a knot with the working thread under one of the other threads. Pull that through there, and then through another couple of beads. Tie a second knot. There. Through another couple of beads and then trim off that end there. And what we want to do is, now you can see this has opened up at this end here. That's why we left a tail to be able to deal with this. So I'm going to take the keeper bead off. I'm going to thread the needle onto this end of the thread. And then we're going to I'll just reinforce that join once more there. So through the bugle, through the delica, back through the bugle, and that's pulled that nice and even. And then we'll go through and we'll tie another couple of knots. Again, these bugles are reasonably smooth on the ends, so these are a nice bugle to use. Just be aware, I think the opaque ones tend to be slightly smoother, whereas the silver lined ones can be a little bit sharper on the edges. So just be careful when you're pulling through your delicas to make sure that you pull straight through and not at an angle, because if you pull through at an angle, then that's when you can get wear on your thread. So there we go, that's taken that there. So there's our little plain cupcake. So what I'm going to do for the purpose of this video is I'm going to use a head pin, and I'm going to thread through the hole in the bottom of the drop, which will bring me out through the hole that we left in the icing. And then I'm going to add just a single size 6 seed bead onto the top, and that will give me the look of a cherry on the top of the cake. So if you want to turn this into a charm, so if you want to make a pair of earrings, if you want to make a little cake themed bracelet or necklace for somebody that you know that's a baker. So we've got a baker on the team here, so I think I might have to make one of these for her Christmas present. So we're going to trim that down, and then we're just going to turn a little loop on the top. And again, we have got YouTube videos on turning a loop, so if you want to see it a little more slowly, then we can do that. And there you are. There's our little cupcake.